Free folk. The free folk is the self-given name for the people who live in the lands beyond the wall, still on the continent of Westeros, but beyond the northern border of the Seven Kingdoms. The name they employ makes reference to their society, which recognizes no inherent or hereditary political authority, except for leaders whom they choose to follow. The people of the Seven Kingdoms refer to the free folk derogatorily as wildlings, while the free folk refer to those south of the wall as kneelers. Normally the wildlings are divided into many different rival clans, but occasionally, they unite behind a single overchieftain known as a king beyond the wall, as they were under Mance Rayder. The free folk are now allies of House Stark after many of their people were saved by Jon Snow. The term wildlings is sometimes also employed to refer to other savages, such as the members of the hill tribes of the Vale that defy the rule of House Aaron, but out of context, the term is usually understood to refer to the peoples living beyond the wall. The free folk are a race of people who live beyond the wall in northern Westeros. They are more commonly referred to as wildlings everywhere south of the wall. Free folk are split into countless cultures, tribes, clans, villages, and raiding parties, some reasonably cultured, others savage and hostile. History. The free folk are descended from the first men, as are the inhabitants of the north. They were, essentially, the people unlucky enough to be living north of the wall when it was constructed 8,000 years ago. Besides this shared ethnic heritage, their common descent means that there are also many cultural similarities between the wildlings and the northerners. The wildlings are much closer in lifestyle and habits to how the first men lived thousands of years ago, though they lack the level of political organization that the first men possessed, as the north has come under some cultural influence from their Undul neighbors who invaded southern Westeros 6,000 years ago, and particularly since the Seven Kingdoms were united into a single realm by the Targaryen conquest 300 years ago. The free folk have made many attempts to invade the Seven Kingdoms since the construction of the wall. Jon Snow mentions that there have been 6 such invasions in the last 1,000 years, before Mance Rayder. Usually such attacks are led by a king beyond the wall, who is elected to lead a force of united tribes and clans. Despite the bravery and perseverance of the free folk, all attempted invasions of the Seven Kingdoms have failed, as those who live north of the wall lack the weapons, training and organization to defeat their southern counterparts. However, wildlings still launch frequent raids against the northernmost regions. Over the ages, the people of the Seven Kingdoms to the south had largely forgotten why the wall was constructed in the first place and came to believe that it exists to protect the realm from the wildlings, whom they regard as primitive savages and barbarians. However, the Night's Watch knows it was originally constructed to defend against the possible return of the near-mythical White Walkers. Since the White Walkers did not return for the past 8,000 years, the Night's Watch has mostly shifted its focus to preventing the wildlings from crossing south of the wall and sending out patrols into the wilderness to keep track of wildling movements. The shift of focus also reduced the Night's Watch from a band of honorable warriors into largely a penal colony for exiled criminals, disgraced noblemen, and bastards with nowhere else to go. The free folk descend from the first men. Archmaester Fulmus speculated in Lies of the Ancients that the others were not monsters but a tribe of early wildlings. Hardhome, the largest settlement of the free folk, was destroyed 600 years ago. Maester Willis writes about the free folk in Hardhome, an account of 3 years spent beyond the wall among savages, raiders, and woods witches. Some kings beyond the wall have occasionally led hosts of free folk south of the wall, but they have eventually been defeated by the Night's Watch or northern lords, such as House Stark and House Umber. Mance Rayder slew 3 rivals and forced the submissions of Styr, Magnar of Ven, and Tormund Giantsbane while becoming king beyond the wall. The various free folk clans have been unable to withstand the others. Culture. The free folk consist of a wide variety of many fractious tribes and village dwellers, some reasonably refined, others savage and hostile. Different factions have very different cultures and practices, and may speak different languages. They spend much of their time fighting one another over petty squabbles, aside from the times when they are unified by a king beyond the wall, as they were under Mance Rayder. The free folk worship the old gods of the forest, like their distant cousins in the north. Even in the lands of House Stark, there are some followers of the faith of the Seven, often southern noblewomen who come to the north to secure marriage alliances. Beyond the wall, however, the old gods are the only gods that are worshipped. The wall, which separates the free folk from the rest of Westeros in many ways, defines them. The free folk refer to themselves as such to differentiate themselves from kneelers, the people south of the wall subject to lords and kings. The free folk view kneelers as lacking freedom, whereas the people of the Seven Kingdoms to the south view wildlings as lawless and primitive killers, rapists, and thieves. Due to their isolation, the free folk remain a people free of states, nobles, kings, and laws, but those of their own choosing, following whichever leader they please. The free folk believed that the gods made the earth for all men to share, and when the kings came with their crowns and their steel swords, they stole it by claiming it was all theirs and theirs alone. There is little in the way of law or property rights in the lands of the free folk. They take what they can and keep what they can defend and have little interest in marriage. Women also partake in raids south of the wall along with their male counterparts. These women warriors are known as spear wives. A major difference between the free folk and the feudal society of the Seven Kingdoms is that the free folk do not recognize a class of hereditary nobility in their society. They take great pride in their free status and only follow leaders whom they choose to lead them. While in certain times the clans will unite behind a king beyond the wall, the title and position are not hereditary, as the free folk will follow no man simply because of who his father was. The free folk will follow a king beyond the wall into battle, but they do not perform ceremonies of submission such as kneeling in front of him or referring to him as your grace. They call the people of the feudal Seven Kingdoms kneelers, because they physically kneel to men who they didn't choose to rule over them. There is no social stratification between highborn lords and lowborn small folk among the free folk. The other side of the coin is that without a central authority, the free folk are so free that they don't really have established and enforced laws. A man keeps what he can take, and continues to hold what he can defend. This is somewhat more brutal and chaotic than the feudal society of the Seven Kingdoms, but in some respects their society is more politically egalitarian. Lacking any major political structure, as well as arable land, most of the free folk are hunter-gatherers and lag behind the kneelers in terms of technology and education. As the concept of smithing is foreign to most free folk, steel gained through trade or raiding is coveted north of the wall. Horses are also rare, and so the wildlings have no cavalry to speak of. Most settlements are relatively small and their structures are simple when compared to those south of the wall. The wildlings do not bury their dead, but burn them. This has nothing to do with religion, it is simply done to prevent the White Walkers from resurrecting the deceased as whites. If no fire is available, they will at least try to decapitate or dismember the corpse so it won't make a very useful white. Society. Free folk society is made of many tribes and clans, each with their own peculiarities and customs. Some recognize chieftains, while others exist in a perpetual state of conflict, warring against each other and themselves. The free folk place importance in a man keeping his word. Some clans are led by clan mothers or magners. Some clans live in small villages in the haunted forest, such as Whitetree, while others reside in halls such as Craster's Keep or Ruddy Hall. Dens live in a hidden valley in the Frost Fangs. Some are semi-nomadic loners, held down only by their own needs. By Kneeler standards, strange clans include the Hornfoots, the Night Runners, the Men of the Frozen Shore, the Cannibal Ice River clans, and the Cave Dwellers. Skin changers and wargs are more accepted north of the wall than in the Seven Kingdoms. Wildlings burn their dead. Languages. The free folk keep to the ways of the first men, and there are many languages beyond the wall, including the common tongue. The old tongue of the first men is still spoken by some, such as the Dens. Music. The free folk have their own musical traditions, including bawdy songs and ballads. Known topics include the Winter Rose, the Horn of Winter, the Red Raven, and the Last of the Giants. The songs of the legendary Baal the Bard are said to be known to all free folk. Mance Raider is able to sing in the old tongue. Instruments used by the free folk include drums and pipes. Enmities. The free folk do not hate Northmen as much as they hate the Black-clad Night's Watch, who prevent free folk from crossing the wall and whose rangers venture beyond the wall. The free folk do not spare brothers of the Night's Watch, whom they call crows or black crows, unless they break their oaths and prove it. Alfin Crowkiller and the Weeper are fierce enemies of the Watch, and the free folk have a hatred for the Ranger Corn Halfhand. However, free folk and the Watch are not beyond some form of cooperation. The two groups sometimes trade at Eastwatch by the Sea. Lost Brothers have been aided by free folk, and the Watch sometimes take free folk children and raise them to be members. There is also fighting and raiding by the various tribes and clans of the free folk north of the wall. Nightrunners fight Hornfoots, while factions of the Men of the Frozen Shore feud amongst each other. Religion. Most free folk worship the old gods. The Dens view their Magner as closer to a god than a lord, however. The Men of the Frozen Shore believe in gods of snow and ice, while crab gods may also be worshipped at Storald's Point. Cave Dwellers allegedly worship dark underground gods. Gilly, one of Craster's wives, speaks of cold gods who take boys. Spear wives. In keeping with the spirit of free folk independence, women are welcome to take up arms and fight alongside men. Such women are called spear wives, and are known to be every bit as ferocious as their male counterparts. Marriage. In marriage, free folk men are expected to be forceful with women, going so far as stealing them from their home or clan. The women, in turn, are expected to put up a fight every step of the way. It is believed that a true man will steal a woman from afar to strengthen the clan. Men must steal daughters, but not wives of other men. When the Red Wanderer is within the Moonmaid, it is considered a propitious time for a man to steal a woman. Women who wed brothers, fathers, or clan kin are believed to offend the gods, and are cursed with weak and sickly children. Naming. Because infant mortality is common in the harsh environment beyond the wall, it is believed to be bad luck to name a child before he or she reaches 2 years of age. A temporary milk name or nickname can be given to a child prior to the official naming. Raiding. Raiding south of the wall is a large part of free folk culture. Raiders start at a young age, as little as 12 years. Raiders either climb the wall or use little boats to cross the Bay of Seals around it. Climbing the height of the wall is an exercise that can take most of a day, and rangers of the Night's Watch often find the broken bodies of those who have fallen. To climb the wall, the free folk use the aid of huge ladders of woven hemp, boots of supple doeskin spiked with iron, bronze, or jagged bone, small stone-headed hammers, stakes of iron and bone and horn, and antlers with sharpened tines bound to wooden hafts with strips of hide serving as ice axes. Over the decades, with the weakening of the Night's Watch, the free folk have found it much easier to either climb the wall or paddle small boats through the Bay of Seals. Growing bolder, they raid as far as the Umberlands, the Northern Mountain clans, or Bear Island, instead of the usual villages and holdfasts in the Gift. Raiders cross the wall to steal swords and axes, spices, silks, furs, and any valuables they can find. They are known to take women in any season to carry them off beyond the wall. Armament. Most free folk warriors wield armament wrought of stone, wood, and bronze, such as axes and flails, fire-hardened spears and lances, and bows of wood and horn. Their bows are outranged by the longbows of the south, but can seemingly shoot an arrow as high as 700 feet. The free folk do not mine nor smelt, and there are few smiths and fewer forges north of the wall. The only metal armor that they wear are bits and pieces looted from dead rangers. Most will wear boiled leather or sewn sheepskins and use crude round shields of skin stretched over wicker, painting them with figures such as skulls and bones, serpents, bear claws, twisted demonic faces, and severed heads. The Dens are more well-armed and armored than most free folk, with bronze helms, axes, short stabbing spears with leaf-shaped heads, shirts sewn with bronze discs, and plain unadorned shields of black boiled leather with bronze rims and bosses. Free folk horses are sure-footed, but scarce. Clans. At the time of the War of the Five Kings, the free folk are divided into about 90 different clans or tribes, some of which have long been bitter enemies with each other. Normally they are politically divided, but were united under King Beyond the Wall Mance Rayder for the common goal of forcing their way south of the wall before the next winter comes, which will bring the White Walkers with it. After his death, Tormund and Jon Snow traveled to Hardhome, along with other members of the Night's Watch and the Free Folk, to attempt to convince the rest of the Free Folk to join them in the upcoming war against the White Walkers and their armies of whites. Some of these groups are socially and culturally very different. While many do understand the common tongue of the Undul south of the wall, according to Mance, the clans and his army speak 7 different languages, including the common tongue. Otherwise they speak the old tongue of the First Men, and its several variants. Some of these clans or groups include numerous clans from the vast haunted forest immediately north of the wall but east of the Frostfang Mountains. These tend to be semi-nomadic hunters and homesteaders, though some of them form villages of their own. White Tree, a community of wildlings. Crasters keep a small homestead maintained by Craster and his many daughter wives. The Dens, who dwell in a valley north of the Frostfangs, who know how to forge bronze and engage in ritual cannibalism and self-scarification. The communities of the Frozen Shore, known for riding sleds and chariots made of walrus bone pulled by dogs. Hornfoots, who dwell on the Frostfangs, known for the blackened and hardened soles of their feet due to not wearing anything on them. Ice River clans. Cave people. The non-human race of giants who live beyond the wall had also allied itself with Mance Rayder and marched in his wildling army. Loosely speaking, they may thus be considered part of the wildlings, though the inhabitants of the 7 kingdoms generally use the term to refer to specifically the human clans living beyond the wall. Of course, this is because until quite recently, those living south of the wall had thought giants were entirely mythical creatures, and were unaware that they actually existed in the far northern lands beyond the wall. Attitudes towards the free folk. Attitudes towards the free folk vary but are mostly negative. The Northmen have a bitter feud with the free folk due to being at the forefront of the latter's incursions into the 7 kingdoms. Other kingdoms south of the wall share similar derisive sentiments, but to a lesser extent, seeing the free folk as a light threat and the Night's Watch as an unnecessary organization where criminals and undesirables are sent to join. The Night's Watch itself holds the most bitter views towards wildlings. For as centuries passed, the White Walkers, the Night's Watch's true enemies, largely came to be considered myths, and Watch's resources have been directed towards fighting the free folk for subsequent generations, forgetting the Order's real purpose. While at Castle Black, Tyrion Lannister converses with Benjen Stark and Yoren regarding the free folk. While not outright sympathizing with them, Tyrion makes clear his view that the only real difference between the free folk and the rest of Westeros is that the former group just happened to live on the northern side of the wall when it was first constructed 8,000 years ago. With Jon Snow as an advocate for the free folk and the ongoing threat of the White Walkers, the free folk have been granted asylum within the Seven Kingdoms and now live within them, aiding House Stark in the fight against the Night King. Prominent free folk. Mance Rayder, the King Beyond the Wall, a former sworn brother of the Night's Watch. Mercy, killed by Jon Snow, after he was sentenced to burn on a pyre. Tormund, called Tormund Giantsbane, one of Mance Rayder's lieutenants. Orell, another of Mance Rayder's followers, a warg. Killed by Jon Snow, though he lives on in the body of his eagle. Ygritte, a young spearwife encountered by Jon Snow and former member of the Lord of Bones' warband. Killed by Olly during the Battle of Castle Black. The Lord of Bones, aka Rattleshird, a renowned leader of a raiding warband now aligned with Mance Rayder. Killed by Tormund for refusing to ally with Jon Snow. Carsey, a chiefess of a wildling clan in Mance Rayder's army. Killed by Whites at Hardhome and turned into one by the Night King. Styr, the Magnar of Ven, another of Mance's lieutenants. Killed by Jon Snow during the Battle of Castle Black. Loboda, a Ven who assumes a position of seniority over his clan following the death of Styr. Killed by a White Walker at Hardhome. Dim Dalba, a chieftain from Hardhome. Craster, an unsavory collaborator of the Night's Watch with a sordid reputation. Killed by Carl Tanner during the mutiny at Craster's Keep. Gilly, one of his many daughter wives. Lover of Samwell Tarly. Morag, one of his wives. Osha, a former spearwife and now a loyal servant of House Stark and protector of Bran and Rickon Stark. Killed by Ramsay Bolton. Jon Snow, former Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who traveled north of the Wall with Tormund, Ghost, and the remaining free folk. In the books. In the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, the free folk consist of various factions such as the People of Ven, raiders from the frozen shore, and settlers and woodsmen in the haunted forest. At the time of the books, they are unified under a king beyond the wall, Mance Rayder, a former member of the Night's Watch who fled the wall and betrayed the Sworn Brothers. With the wall grievously under strength, as the first book begins, there are fears that the wildlings may try to invade and that Lord Eddard Stark might have to lead his banners against them in a punitive strike. The wildlings are mostly armed with rather primitive weapons, made of bone, stone, wood and dragonglass. It is unclear whether they know that dragonglass is lethal to the others. The Thens work bronze, and raiders like the Weeper carry stolen steel and iron swords looted off corpses. When a wildling man wants a wife, wildling or non-wildling, it is custom that he must kidnap her, while risking severe injury or even death by the woman and her relatives, and the woman must fight back. As a rule, the wildlings do not kidnap married women. Ygritte explains to Jon, who is unaware of this custom, that if the man succeeds, it shows that he is strong, brave and cunning, and this is what wildling women seek in men. If the man turns out to be an abusive husband, the wife can always slit his throat. Because Jon captured Ygritte, albeit, he was unaware of this custom and didn't know Ygritte was a woman when he and Qhorin Halfhand captured the group of wildlings in which she happened to be, and because Jon saved her life, Ygritte and Tormund point out to Jon that he and Ygritte could be considered technically married, according to loose wildling customs, which are not strictly defined laws. This stuns Jon, who reveals this was not his intent and his capture of her/saving her life was not for sex. The wildlings prefer to kidnap women far from their villages, rather than from their own clan, and it is considered a great sin to marry relatives. The old gods of the forest, worshipped by both the free folk and the Northmen, don't have as many formal rules as the Faith of the Seven, but their religion still maintains a few fundamental social prohibitions, one of which forbids incest. While the wildlings have no knowledge about genetics, they understand that inbreeding may result in weak and sickly children. Thus, what Craster is doing with his daughter wives is considered an abomination, even by the other wildlings, and not remotely acceptable behavior by their own standards. Since the wildlings do not receive any formal education, illiteracy is common among them. When Jon shows Tormund the bastard letter, Tormund admits that he cannot read. Due to the harsh conditions beyond the wall, the wildlings have a high infant mortality rate and believe that naming a baby after birth is an ill omen. Therefore, they do not give their babies names at all until they have survived to 2 years of age. They do sometimes give their babies milk names in the meantime.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.